Okay, I have my 2 checkpoints in my room. This is checkpoint 1. This is checkpoint 2. Now, once I put them in the room, I need to decide that where my hero is going to respawn once they've triggered the checkpoint. So if you look at this bottom corner right here, I can click somewhere in this room. Whoops, hang on. I just put an extra checkpoint in. I can go somewhere in this room and I can see exactly where my cursor is. For example, my cursor is at 496 X value and 16 Y value. So I'm going to write down 496, 16, and I know that when I respawn, my hero is going to respawn here. And I'm looking at these X and Y values right here. So my second checkpoint is going to be around 700, 735 maybe. So by 286, 288, somewhere in there. So I'm going to write those numbers down because that's where we're going to tell the hero to respawn when they die after they've triggered that checkpoint. So I'm done with this for right now. I didn't make any changes. So now we have to do our code. So the first bit of code we do is we've got to tell the computer that we're going to use a variable. So under your control tab, drag in this rectangle, and we're going to name our variable CP for checkpoint. So we're going to start it out with the value of 0. So when the hero is created at the beginning of the game, it's going to set the variable checkpoint to 0, CP to 0. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to change that when the hero touches a checkpoint. Add event collision with checkpoint 1. And what we're going to do is we don't want to change it to 1 if we've already hit the second checkpoint. The only time we want to change our checkpoint to 1 is if checkpoint 1 is the first checkpoint that we hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to check and see if our checkpoint variable is 0, which means our player hasn't touched any checkpoints. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set that variable to now equal 1 when they collide with the first checkpoint. Okay? Now, this isn't the only thing we want to do though, so let's drag in our blocks. We also want to change the sprite. So go to main 1, drag in the sprite block, and we're going to change the sprite of the object checkpoint 1, and we're going to change it to our activated or our dead checkpoint sprite. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for checkpoint 2, collision event with object checkpoint 2. And this time we want to change our variable to CP if it is less than 2. So whether it's 0 or 1, we're still going to change our variable CP to 2 because we've touched the second checkpoint. So this way, even if they skip checkpoint 1, it's still going to reboot them at checkpoint 2 if they've touched it. So if checkpoint, if checkpoint is less than 2, so if it's smaller than 2, we're going to do two things. We're going to change our variable checkpoint to equal 2. Variable CP is 2. And we're going to go to main 1 and change our sprite. We're changing it on the object checkpoint 2. And we're going to use the dead checkpoint sprite. Okay. So, good so far. Let's try it out and see what happens. So all we've told it to do is to change the variables and change the sprite when we touch it. So all we're going to see this time around is that the sprite changes when we touch it. Okay, so that sprite changes. That sprite changes. So that part works. The only problem is if we die right now, it doesn't take us back to the checkpoint. So we have to tell it to do that. And the way we do that is anytime something causes us to lose a life, such as we're outside the room, such as we collide with an enemy, we got to tell it where to respawn us. So let's take a look at our outside room, for example. So this is what it looks like right now. But instead of jumping to the start, we're going to check the variable CP and see what its value is, and that's going to tell us where to jump. So let's go ahead and drag out our blocks. We always want to set our lives relative to -1. We always want to lose a life anytime something kills us. But we're going to check the variable, and if variable CP is 0, then we'll jump to the start. Okay? If variable CP is 1, that's our first checkpoint, then we're not going to jump to the start anymore. Instead, under our move menu, this button, jump to position. And we're going to put in the coordinates that were near our first checkpoint. Make sure they're a little higher. You don't want to respawn in the middle of a platform. So my coordinates were 496 and 16 for my first checkpoint. Okay? And then for my second checkpoint, let's go back to variables under our control tab. If CP is equal to 2, then we're going to respawn, jump to point under move. We're going to respawn at X is 735 and Y is 286. Okay, so now let's try it and see if it works. And you're going to do that anywhere you lose a life. You're going to put it in when you collide with an enemy, or enemy parent, when you collide with your bullet parent. So right now, starting out the game, when I die, I lose a life and I'm jumped to start. So after I've touched my first checkpoint, so now when I die, I should wind up respawning near that checkpoint. And I did. I lost a life and I respawned at the checkpoint. Alright, trigger that checkpoint. When I died, I lost a life and I respawned at the second checkpoint. Make sure you add a sound for when you have your collision with the checkpoint. And that's all.